Welcome aboard. I am Lynn Bacani. This is Maritime Viewpoints on Marino World Online. Joining us on this special day of Seafarers are two gentlemen distinguished in the international maritime community. Mr. Gerardo Borromeo, the Chief Executive Officer of the Philippine Transmarine Carriers, or PTC Group, and Captain Rajesh Unni, the Chief Executive Officer of Synergy Marine Group, or SMG. Great to have you both on the program, Sir Dito and Captain Unni. Happy Day of the Seafarer.
Thank you, Lynn. Good to be on the program with you and, of course, with Captain Unni.
Thank you, Lynn. Likewise, great to have Dito on board, and happy Day of the Seafarers.
And it's really important to touch base with our seafarers, especially during these trying times. Please tell us about Viewpoints, your latest partnership.
So maybe I can start with a bit of stats. So there was a survey that went out and said, what's the risk of depression, ever since the pandemic, what has happened? And we saw the increase by almost 100%. And then we said, okay, how much of those seafarers have been tested positive for anxiety or depression? And that number was 30%. This is humongous in my opinion. And then 35% of that didn't seek help, which also was quite dangerous. And to make this worse, 20% of them had suicidal tendencies to report. So now if you put all this in context and say you want safe ships, which is number one priority, you want a happy crew, you want people to be motivated and inspired, I think we are not setting the right ecosystem for them to thrive. So that's what we took away from this survey. And we felt, obviously, this is just a huge compromise on well-being of seafarers and safety of the vessel. And I think what has also happened is that this has then said, okay, what do we do with this? And, there's a lot of discussion about crew change crisis, the pandemic itself, the virus, how is it affecting different people? And then several ports closing in and out, depending on how their country is reacting to this. And so there's so much of uncertainty for people to come on board and go back to meet their families. So all this, I think the human brain itself is not wired to deal with uncertainties. So 3 years ago, we said in India, we went to Tata and said, Tata, we said, okay, how do we look at this? Because Tata Institute of Social Science had something for the land-based. So we had 3 years of some experience. And then we realized that I think we have some idea on how to scale this, because we didn't want to create another helpline which don't understand the fundamentals of being a seafarer. So I think that was one. And then we realized we have some amount of scale in the Philippines, but we really want to understand how does a seafarer in the Philippines think, and how do we partner with somebody who also believed that this is the right thing to do, not just talk about it, but really believe that this is the right thing to do and we must invest in this. And that's how we met up with Dito, and we had several conversations. And every conversation, frankly, I'm inspired by his passion and the passion of the whole team to be able to come on the ground and make things happen. So I think this is how we formed V Team. And I feel this is the first time we have this bespoke service available in the Philippines. I think between our organizations, we have more than 100,000 seafarers on this platform. And it's also run by highly professional and trained counselors. What we made it more interesting is it's also that it's free from a counseling standpoint, and it's also free from a calling standpoint. So we worked with Inmarsat to say, okay, how can we allow people to then freely open up and talk to people? So it's a not-for-profit initiative right now, but we welcome like-minded and people who have similar passion and values, because this is not just, we have just started this out, but this is just an initial concept. But we want to scale this and hopefully touch each and every seafarer's life. Want them to feel reassured that we are there with them. We understand we are ourselves seafarers. We have it in our heart, and we want to do everything that we can to make a difference and not just talk about it.
I think that what Rajesh, Captain Unni laid out was precisely the journey that Synergy took, and the PTC group took a similar journey in terms of trying to understand how do you make a global maritime professional as effective and as efficient on board, knowing that they operate in a global environment, a harsh environment, away from home, and many times it can be seen as a very lonely profession. And yet the important role that each of these maritime professionals play to ensure that global trade can continue as seamlessly as possible is invaluable. And what we realized over the years is that there have been occasions when people have fallen off the edge, so to speak, because of challenges that the environment have put on them. And so we felt that we needed to address this, and the same way that Synergy Group have identified the gaps that exist, we at PTC also identified similar elements, and we started to work on a program where we could address them, and in order to ensure that the maritime professionals felt that they were never alone, and in so doing, providing that culture of care, working with our principals to be able to ensure that the seafarers had a framework that they could use when they were out at sea, have the ability to reach out and call a friend, if you will, and then later on couldn't have continuous support when they came home. Those were the key elements. And we realized that when we started to talk to Synergy Marine, that their mindset and their approach was very unique, and also reflected the important value that Synergy provides as far as a maritime professional is concerned. So between the PTC group and Synergy, we said, well, we're looking at the same thing. Let's come together because partnerships of this sort are very, very important if we want to make a difference. And Captain Unni's vision and his drive for what has allowed Synergy to grow has been equally inspiring for PTC. And on our side, realizing that we are, as a country, able to provide so many Filipinos, it's the least that we can do to be able to go and work with partners to be able to make a difference. At the end of the day, we realize that it's not just running a ship, it's contributing immensely to the global economy. And no better example over the last 15 months when the whole shipping industry was able to survive and continue to help the global economy move in spite of the challenges that Captain Unni has described. And they were very, very challenging times. And these times are not going to go away. They're just going to get, I guess, more complex. So when Synergy and PTC came together to describe an approach, Synergy had been working on something for the last 3 years, and this is what Captain Unni talked about, and being able to reach out and call a friend so that you're never alone is a very, very powerful tool. And it was aptly called We Team because it's all about the team, both on shore and on board, working hand in hand to be able to give each individual an ability to feel that they are never alone. And so we're very proud of the relationship that we have built with Synergy on this effort. We Team, we believe, is the tip of the iceberg to be able to address a growing concern that we see. Certainly we see that in the maritime field, but it is something that has affected many individuals at home, at work, whether you're at land or at sea. And so we feel that this initiative is something that we're very proud of having been able to partner with Synergy, and we look forward to being able to expand it in so many different ways. If nothing else, it is to ensure our maritime professionals that they are never going to be alone, and that they will always have somebody to talk to allow them to continue to do the very, very excellent work that helps them move the world.
Mhm. And so, how's the status of the operations of V Team?
So I think one of the things that V Team does right now is first, I think like we talked about, we have a counseling and calling service where it's okay not to be okay, and it's out like Dito put it. It's okay to call a friend and feel comfortable in sharing what you're going through. So that's the first piece. And how is it unique? It's also available to every seafarer and even their families. It's absolutely free. Anybody can feel free to call in. It does not have to be part of Synergy or PTC. It's a service that we offer anybody and their families. Two, what is fundamentally more important, it is run by people who understand the mindset of a seafarer. There's a bit of a difference between people ashore who have a very different lifestyle to those that go on board and spend some time and come back and go back on different ships. So it's not the same. So somebody who understands what somebody at sea goes through, even for example, when you send an email, how does the seafarer interpret that email in itself, needs a very different understanding. So it's run by people who understand seafarers and their mindset. Three, it's completely confidential. We want no stigma to be attached to any seafarer, come what may, in making this call. We want them to completely know it's okay to not be okay. And we want also to completely know that this is completely anonymized and there's no way this data gets out of that call with somebody that they speak to. It's available in multiple languages. And I think that along with that, that's one part of it. Now, the second part, what we want to invest into and we are doing is understanding and training people on board and ashore to understand these signs and symptoms. In a sense, create barefoot counselors. How do they pick these trends? How do they understand that somebody needs help? Because it's not always easy for somebody to open up and say, I'm not okay. So, how do we create an ecosystem around you that people feel empowered and people feel okay to come out and say, I'm not okay? And how do then we train people to understand these subtle signals? So that's the second piece on training that we're going to work on. And the third thing is to how do we create a complete wellness ambassador program? So we said, okay, we seafarers, but we are not champions of wellness. So we tied up with one of the world's largest not-for-profit organization based out of DC called Ashoka. There, a lot of Nobel laureates are Ashoka Fellows, and they have some Ashoka Fellows who do some amazing work on mental well-being and wellness. So we partnered with them and we're creating a program such that we create these wellness ambassadors across the teams on board and ashore. So in a nutshell, we also want to drive a complete change in the way we look at seafarers and they come out and say, I'm not okay. Okay. The reaction most of the time is, you're not okay. But no, we're saying it's perfectly fine. Tell us, how can we help you? So that's the core mindset of V Team, which I think is very different from what we have today in across many countries. And I think end of the day, I feel that even if we save one life, then I think anything that we do today is worth it. If we can touch somebody's lives or their families in a positive way, then I think everything that we do today makes sense. And if we can do something that where we only not just talk, but actually do something, that's what I think end of the day matters. So for us, that's why V Team is not just another launch, but it is a core of everything that we do. It's a seafarers are the core, the teams on board and ashore, people are the core of anything that we do. And if we don't invest in our people, I'm afraid maybe we will lose the train or lose the, you look out, lose the forest for the trees kind of thing.
No, that's really good, Rajesh. And in fact, I think, Lynn, to your question, We Team is an evolving platform. And the essence of that evolution is exactly what Captain Unni just shared. It's a culture of care that has to start with the companies that want to put this forward. It's not enough to say, here's a telephone, make a call, and you can talk to somebody. the idea of understanding what people go through and being able to anticipate the situation and having situational awareness is a distinctive element that makes We Team, I guess, unique and perhaps more powerful. More importantly, by having companies who want to make a platform available that will help individuals early enough so that they don't get too far down the road in terms of the challenges that they face, allows one to be able to get help sooner and realize that the end result out of all of this is to ensure a safe and efficient vessel. And I think that's the essence of what the PTC Group and Synergy Marine have tried to do, is realizing that we don't have all the answers ourselves. But if we work together, if we share, and as Captain Unni pointed out, if we make people feel comfortable, that we can constantly work together to derive new solutions, We Team becomes a platform that opens up many doors, helps keep people safe, helps keep people and their perspectives whole, to ensure that as a team, a ship's complement can continue to operate that vessel as efficiently as possible. And more importantly, it allows for good ship-to-shore communication. It allows for early warning. It allows for all of us to stay within a framework that helps shipping do the work that it needs to do, especially now. And you can have seen that in the last 15 months, as Captain Unni talked about it. I mean, for somebody having to be on board a ship for way beyond their contract, that's not easy. And you can dangle all the money in the world and say, hey, look, just stay on and sacrifice. But it's more than that. And so We Team is a platform that emanates from a joint vision that the Synergy Group and the PTC Group have, which is to create that culture of care and an empathy based on understanding the nature of the job and being able to provide solution sets that can assist people in their most difficult periods. But it is also a solution that allows one to start early on. So We Team will evolve to, while the most important thing is when you're out on the water, being able to connect and talk to a friend, We Team is eventually going to start by being able to almost empower and prepare individuals before they get deployed, so that they know everything that they can utilize, so they never fall into a trap. If we can avoid them falling into the trap in the first place, that already is a big win. And then when they're on board, this facility that Synergy has evolved over the last 3 years is something that we need to make people feel very comfortable that lifting that phone is not a problem. In fact, it's the first step to ensuring that they don't get deeper into whatever challenges they may have. And these could be small issues that all of a sudden become very, very, very big issues because of a lack of communication. So essentially, We Team is a communications mechanism to allow one to be able to feel comfortable about what they're doing or what they're not doing. And the third part, which eventually will come, is when they come home, there can be continuing support. And that way, we realize that the people who work for both Synergy and PTC, and for that matter, for all of their principals, they can constantly be prepared and to be ready to be able to go back to sea. And that continuity is so helpful, because familiarity with the system, familiarity with the ship, familiarity with the job, that's part and parcel of ensuring that the shipping industry will be around for a long time, because it has to do all of the heavy lifting. So this is a natural, I would say this is a natural and very important platform that needs to be out there if we are going to have seamless continuity and sustainability.
Indeed, We Team is bringing the seafaring shipping community together. So, Sir Dito, what are the reality checks have we internalized on this impact of pandemic to the industry?
Well, when I look back at the last 15 months and think about how we got into this situation, I realize that for most companies and even for most governments, when they talk of a crisis, most of the crisis and activities that we all try to anticipate, we never really practiced and prepared for something of this magnitude, a global 99-year event. And so when it happened in a manner that caught us all by surprise, where many of what we would call our Plan B or Plan C activities did not go far enough to anticipate the biggest challenges. So when the world started to shut down and each country declared their national emergencies, a lot of international conventions like the Maritime Labor Convention, which was there to protect and provide for not only social benefits, but for the protection of an individual's working relationship, sort of was set aside. And what we realized is that even if all of the countries that approved the convention, like the Maritime Labor Convention, they were overtaken by national emergencies, in particular the health emergency. And once these borders were closed and the aviation industry shut down, the shipping industry had nowhere really to turn to. How do we get people off a ship and onto a ship from wherever they come from? And we never really practiced any what you would call fallback activities. And we realized that we were caught not only by surprise, but unprepared. And it was through, I think, the sheer effort of ship owners, ship managers, crew managers, working hand in hand with our social partners, the International Transportation, the ITF, and working with governments to try to create bridges and areas of connectivity. It took a while. And because every time we thought we had answers, the questions changed, and all of a sudden, this surprise came up, or that surprise came up, and we were almost having to go back to zero. But I guess you could say that what the shipping industry can celebrate is its resilience, and you've got to thank the seafarers. These maritime professionals really gutted it all out. I mean, without them as real frontliners, the shipping industry would not have been able to continue to do the job that it has had. To provide the economic heavy lifting. And it hasn't come without a cost. And that cost is the cost that we talk about, which is the challenges to the individuals. And that's why, again, coming back to We Team, it is a support mechanism that allows us to at least try to overcome challenges which we cannot resolve right away. But certainly this global pandemic, if there's anything learned from all of this, is we won't wait for the next 99-year event to happen, because it could happen at any time. The lessons learned and the new arrangements worked out between owners, managers, social partners, and governments, we need to go back to the drawing boards and ensure that this kind of planning becomes second nature to all of us. Because we realize that as a global industry, we have to have the connectivity. So I'm very grateful to governments like the Philippines who have created the green lanes so that we can create exceptional passages by which individuals can continue to move in and out. Because without people, without the tonnage enablers, which are our maritime professionals, the ships won't move. And without the ships moving, the economy is not going to move. And companies like Synergy, PTC, and all of our other partners in the industry, we need to find ways to work together and work, I guess, in ways that are completely out of the box. Because these global events have taught us that never to take things for granted, expect the unexpected. And so we've got a plan for that. And that I'm hoping that the next time around we'll be a little better at being able to resolve these problems sooner. But we've learned our lessons. Governments have shown some, I guess, flexibility, but it is the need for the government or governments to work as a whole, so that it's not just the health industry or the health ministry driving responses, but they've got to work hand in hand with the transportation ministry to be able to see what are the allowable flexibilities, because without that, like I said, you stop people from moving, you stop the whole industry and the domino effect that it has shown.
So, Captain Unni, you're the founder of Synergy Marine Group. You had this 3 decades of your maritime career. How do you see these things now amidst this pandemic, and your compare it to your previous experiences?
Yeah, thank you, Lynn. Yeah, I think this has been very different. The first thing that happened, I was in China and Japan in early part of 2020, I think in end January, when this whole thing had come out, and something reminded me of an YouTube talk that I listened to Bill Gates, and he said the world actually is preparing ourselves for wars, but what we really need to prepare ourselves is for pandemics like this, and how can the healthcare system support such situations. And so one thing that came out for me out of this pandemic, and I think that we have not learned fully because it's still going on and it's more an endemic today, and we will start needing to deal with this every now and then, is that a lot of times we talk and we perhaps are talking to our own echo chamber. So shipping in our own voices need to go beyond the port. Very quickly we tried to find solutions. We created framework. We worked with the Singapore government to build the protocol. This was went into ICS. It was shared. IMO accepted seafarers as key workers. But I think there was a lot of noise, but very little that actually got done on the ground. The other thing that came out, which was very evident, was that while we are competing as companies, there are certain things that we really don't need to compete, but we need to collaborate. Whether it's about well-being of seafarers, whether it's about safety, whether it's about environmental impact. I think the pandemic really opened all our eyes a little bit to say, listen, guys, you don't need to compete on everything. There are areas and room for each of us to come together, collaborate on fundamental things which is going to benefit the entire maritime ecosystem. So I think that's the one internalization or realization that we have. The second thing is that very quickly we went from a physical interaction to a remote interaction, whether it's even with interacting with our own seafarers before they go on board a ship, because those physical touch points meant a lot. And suddenly the organizations needed to adapt to a remote interaction. And I think this is already there. It's like a genie out of the bottle. You can't put it back in. So we will go forward. We will see a more hybrid model, and digital is there to stay. So then how do we as responsible organizations prepare our seafarers and our teams, both on board and ashore, for such changes? Because otherwise, again, it's unfair. You put people on board and ashore and ask them to perform a particular task, but you don't empower them with the right skill and the right tool, then again, we are failing. So I think B Team for us is an evolving platform, like what Dito mentioned, where we think that we will continue to constantly invest into the seafarers. And well-being is the start, but we'll also continuously invest into them, because end of the day, the pandemic has thrown up very clearly that these are the people on board a ship who are keeping the supply chain ticking. All of us are just making noise. So if they are the ones that are actually moving the goods from point A to point B, then it's a duty for each of us to invest in them, to make them successful, to make them happy, to make sure that their families are protected. So I think for us, that's big thing out of that. And that's how this industry itself has been very resilient.
What if I tell you that KSIM Connect has become a reality? It is the cloud-based ecosystem for maritime education and training, where Kongsberg provides simulation and services to all members. As an instructor, my main goal is to educate and train seafarers to acquire skills promoting safety, sustainability, and efficiency at sea. At KSIM Connect, I can efficiently manage my simulators, my exercises, and my students. In the exercise archive, I can store my library of exercises, and if I want, collaborate and share them with my colleagues or others in the global community. KSIM Connect enables me to give students access to cloud simulation, so they can train anytime and anywhere while learning at their own pace. In addition, I can explore the library of models and exercise areas, download or subscribe those that fit the learning objectives. And I can even order spare parts or a service visit if needed. Kongsberg has started to create the future of maritime education and training by creating the community where instructors can find news, explore and download available simulator models, distribute or share exercises that fit the curriculum. Imagine using Case and Connect to integrate our simulators in the same virtual exercise environment, enabling students to train and interact together. It doesn't matter whether you're in Singapore, Australia, or in the United States. As long as you're online, you are part of the knowledge-sharing community. Kongsberg is shaping the future of maritime education and training by creating the community. Let's continue building this community together for the benefit of ourselves and the entire maritime training industry. Join KSIM Connect today.
You're watching Maritime Viewpoints on marinoworldonline. Okay, Sir Dito and Captain Unni, Let's talk about the vaccination of our seafarers. How do you see the rollout of vaccination for our seafarers?
So we formed the Neptune Declaration, Lynn. We got together as part of the Global Maritime Forum. We got together a lot of like-minded people and said, okay, we have split incentives right now in the value chain between a ship owner, or operator, ship manager, crew manager, or charterers. How do we make sure all of us are aligned? So this was the first thing we came out on Neptune Declaration. And then we realized that the biggest option to succeed in this whole thing is to make sure that we vaccinate people as quickly as possible. And we requested people to understand that you can't put the whole burden of this vaccination on countries that are predominantly the supplying nations of seafarers. And these are all developing countries, whether it's India, Philippines, China, East Europe, maybe not China, but, so we are putting a lot of burden on developing countries. So it can't be that you will expect these countries to alone vaccinate the seafarers. So while we said that we requested the governments to prioritize seafarers as key workers in their own countries, so that we set up these green lanes and fast vaccination opportunities, we also came out to request other countries. We have this huge port health network, and I don't see why these port health network cannot be used as hubs to get seafarers vaccinated when ships call into these ports, especially in countries where you have vaccine a little bit more than what the other countries do have. And US, for example, has set a great example. If you see in these days now, that ships that go to get into the US, we make sure that we have this opportunity to try and get people vaccinated, obviously having their consent. The second challenge is most ships have diverse nationalities of crew, seafarers. So you have people from Philippines, India, China, East Europe. Now, every country, for whatever reason, had their own vaccination protocol and regime. Unless somebody like IMO or WHO standardize these vaccinations and say, these are the set of vaccinations that are acceptable as a norm, we will again have vaccine nationalisms. What we really don't want to end up is, as seafarers, you enter into a port and say, okay, this port says, I accept these set of vaccines, but not what you have. And then there's chaos again. So the second request we have for vaccines is that, can we have a standard list? So the first set, third request, the first one is get people or seafarers in their own countries priority over everybody else, and please use them just like healthcare workers, accept them as key workers, get vaccinated. The second, of course, use the port health and the global network, and use that as hubs to vaccinate these seafarers quickly. And of course, the third is that we have a standardization of these vaccines so that we know that these are the set of vaccines that are acceptable, and then the seafarers have some clarity about it. So I think that these are some of the things that we would like to see from a vaccine standpoint.
So, Dito, from your own perspective, or that of PTC, or as well as that of the International Chamber of Shipping, wherein you're also currently serving as the vice chair, what's your take on this?
Yeah, thanks, Lynn. Let me take off on Captain Unni's talk. And we're talking about a vaccine, and you think the easiest thing to do is just to vaccinate. But as he described, to vaccinate is not the easiest thing, and it's driven by your previous question, which is how prepared were we to actually face a situation where we had to do something as simple as getting a jab. And we realized that none of our business continuity plans had factored this in. A lot of the focus is we've got to get the vaccines equally distributed all over the world, because if we are going to get this global pandemic under check, everyone, and I mean everyone, has to be able to get vaccinated. Otherwise, we are going to see what Captain Unni talked about is a continuing endemic situation. Now, when you talk about specifically seafarers, we have to recognize that there are seafarers who are on shore and there are seafarers on board. And the sooner we get the people on board vaccinated, the easier it will be for them to go home as well. And so we cannot take this problem in terms of individual parts. Yes, let's understand the individual parts because we need to understand how the individual parts interface. But the solution set to this is exactly what Captain Unni talked about, which is take care of the people on the ground, but you also have to be able to take care of the people on the ship, because anyone who is not covered by a solution like a vaccine continues to be a vector for transmission. And as we have seen from the way governments have responded, people coming off the ship are suspected of being potential vectors of transmission. And so it would be almost unfair and more difficult for them, having already spent so much time out at sea, to then have to still face the kind of stringent protocols to be able to finally get home. And this is all complicated by the fact that the required solutions to a global pandemic like this, health issues, were never really planned properly. So we're playing catch up all the time. And even as we think we've got the answers in check, the questions change, which means the plans have to constantly evolve. But what is nice to hear and see is how some governments are working to be able to vaccinate even the crew that are on board, because the sooner that we can get this and the sooner that we can get the global population under check, the sooner we can return to what we would like to think of as a better norm. But it's not easy. It's the easiest thing to do is to say, hey, this is how we should do it. To get governments to agree, to be able to make sure that the supply of vaccines can be as well distributed across all countries, particularly at vaccination hubs, such as what Captain Unni described. Those are logistic nightmares, particularly because of the way the vaccines behave, their shelf life, their storage environment. So it's not as straightforward, but there are solutions, and we just need to continue to be as creative and flexible as possible, because the virus, the enemy that we're dealing with, is constantly changing in so many different ways. And we've got to get ahead of that curve if we want to finally be able to manage the situation. And then in learning all of this, and I fully agree with Captain Unni, we've learned a lot, but there is so much more for us to still learn. We've got to be prepared to continuously think of other ways that we can get ahead. And then after all of that's done, we go back to the drawing board and say, okay, how are we going to do this all better the next time so we don't get caught flat-footed or as flat-footed? So it's a continuing effort. And again, I go back to why We Team is there. It's having to be able to propagate a culture of care. And it shouldn't be a phrase or a set of words. Having a culture of care is a mindset. It's something that you internalize. And this is why we are very proud of this relationship with Synergy Marine, because when you look at people who have that vision, and Captain Unni and his team have that vision, they realize that for their company to succeed, they need people. The shipping industry is maybe three parts. You've got the ships, that's the hardware. You've got the cargo. But what makes the ships and the cargo move are people. And it is ensuring that the people can be put in the best shape of their lives, and to be able to operate with the kind of processes and utilizing the kind of technology that will make them most effective. That's what Synergy Marine and PTC are trying to do. Create these social infrastructure platforms to enable our enablers to be the best that they can be. And that then distinguishes the companies and the delivery of their services. So you talk about vaccination, and it just reflects how complicated and complex these businesses are. And our realization that while we thought we had all the answers, we realize that there are so many more things that we need to do. But maybe that's what gets us up every morning and makes us come to work, to be able to overcome those challenges. And in the process, really put to test what having a culture of care as a mindset and a behavior is all about. And like I said, and reinforcing what Captain Unni said, we invite all companies to consider what We Team can do, because it's just the beginning of many, many more things that is going to be important if in the future we are going to attract the kind of maritime professional that will make a difference. Our business is all about people, and our future is going to be about people. And if we can provide the framework and an environment to make those people as effective as possible, then this industry will continue to shine. And shipping has an important role in global trade. It's not going to go away. There will be probably more autonomous systems on board. I don't think that it'll ever become unmanned. and certainly the people skills. I once shared this thought. It used to be that we would look for the able-bodied seaman. The future is going to be an able-skilled seaman, skilled in multiple competencies, with a platform that can help them become the best that they can be. And when you have that, then the teams and the companies, the ship managers and the crew managers, when they have these things working together, then the industry wins.
Captain Woody, what are the other challenges you see and any special concerns you still wish to express?
Sure. I think that one of the things like what Dito mentioned, right? This is going to stay. So vaccine is perhaps one solution. And like most countries that have been successful, they have vaccinated a lot of their population, whether if you look at US as an example. So while that will continue, the other trauma and uncertainty will still continue from a seafarer's perspective. And because now today there is a lot of more open communication, there's also an open share of bad news, whether it's from home and the families and other things that happen, which means that I think mental health and emotional well-being is definitely going to be there for a long, long time. And I think it's a unique opportunity for all like-minded people to come together to address this in the best possible way. Because I think on the whole, every one of us wants to ensure that we set up our own people on board for success in the most happiest environment. So I think mental well-being definitely will be there. The second thing that you also see is like what he said, that if such pandemic situations do arise, then the opportunity to go and have a physical interaction with people on board, for example, is also going to be a very big challenge. So how do we then find a way in which you still have a framework where people still have those core values, whether it's about empathy, respect, teamwork, the whole value system? How do you still have that without so much of a physical touch point? How is that going to be built? The third thing, the whole world is changing, whether it's about digitalization. A lot of people today are confused with digitalization, where they're only saying it is more about a paper process being digitalized. So I would call that a digital paper process. But what's really coming behind that is a digitalization and digital transformation, which means that business and operating models will change. So how do we empower and prepare our people for this change is going to be one. The third thing is also about decarbonization. The younger generation, they're so passionate, they're so connected about making sure that we leave a more cleaner planet, and rightfully so. So how do you then prepare people to align with those vision and thoughts? So like Dito mentioned, there must be a reason why we had ordinary seamen and able-bodied seamen in those days, given the context. But I think it's time to reflect on this and say, what are the next most relevantly skilled people that we have on board? How do we bring in diversity and inclusion in workplace? So these are things that are really essential for our industry to then attract young talent. So the challenge with this pandemic is also that a lot of people feel that shipping, there's a lot of talk, but when it really comes down to action, there are very few people acting. And so there may be people who will say, okay, I really don't want to have seafaring as my career. Let me find something ashore. I actually spoke to a cadet 3 days ago who is just finished his cadetship, but has decided to enroll for a data science program because he feels that that's where his future lies. So how do you inspire such cadets who have spent 36 months at sea and not lose all their seafaring skills? We need to attract them. We need to attract them for the right reasons. We need to attract them by saying what an opportunity that's lying ahead for them, whether it's about the way we are going about digitalization, whether the way we are going to manage decarbonization. And the recent discussions at MEPC and other things are not comforting. We all know what's happened there, right? There's no consensus, there's vague targets. Yeah. So these are very important things. If we don't do this right, I feel we may not be able to, resonate with young people. Digitalization, sustainability, these are things that resonate with young people. We need the young people to be inspired to come out to sea. And that can't be by just saying the normal things. We have to show them. They want to see. There's a lot of transparency in today's world. Like, for example, with your channel, you have so many people viewing your channel. There's so many people who listen to you, and then they know what's happening. So they need transparency. And when you are a transparent world, then you have to be accountable. Then you need to, actually walk the talk. So I think these are things that I feel are going to be the future challenges.
And it's not going to get any easier, no, Rajesh? I mean, just when we thought the world was becoming smaller, it's become more complex, more demanding. When we talk about this, we team, and I know that we've discussed this before, while we talk about it for our maritime professionals on board, all of us need this as well in the office. The challenges that we all face trying to solve everyone else's problem suggests that partnerships are the way to go. Partnerships allow us to bring more people into a what I'd call an engaged, meaningful conversation where answers can come out. And at the same time, we all then realize, oh, I see, because you see it from that perspective and I see it from this perspective. How do we put 2 and 2 together to make 5? And this is what we need, because globalization and a world that is becoming so small because of connectivity has just raised expectations. Everything is on demand. And just like your show, Lynn, I mean, you want us to answer now, and we're, through technology, we're able to do all of this. And you've got to think fast. So it is exciting, it is challenging, but one of the reasons why we are trying to put this framework together to echo Captain Unni is because we will not succeed without good people, and we are competing with all other industries for those good people. And we have to make a statement of why shipping moves the world, and why is shipping such a noble profession, and why is it important for people to participate. It's about people, the processes that will change, and the technology that's going to come in. But that's only part of it. To create value, people need to know that when they come in to this situation, they're going to be taken care of. And it's not just a one-stop, but there is a future career. It's not just a career at sea. It's a career in a very vibrant shipping industry, which, as we like to describe it, moves the world. So we're actually creating our own future problems. But when we work together, solutions like We Team, I believe you'll give us a year or 2 to evolve this, and we will probably amaze ourselves at how valuable that resource is to not just address challenges of mental health, but many other issues that make people as productive as possible. It's the ability to communicate, the transparency that Captain Unni talks about, and the people who are trying to bring this together realize that they can engage so much more readily. And ultimately, I think our common interest are, where can we find the future maritime professional? And when you think of how long does it take to develop a maritime professional, it's 4 years at school and another 7 years maybe to become a master. You're talking about 10 to 14 years. We can build a ship in less than 2 years. So for every ship that has to be built, and you can do that in 2 years, and if it takes us 7 years or more to actually build the captain that's going to go on this, there's going to be that imbalance. So having that imbalance means we need to find ways to attract good quality talent, to continue to have that talent learn and become better, and to also know that they're not alone, that they're part of a set of companies and of partnerships that do care. This culture of care is not, like I said, not a set of words. It's a mindset and it's a behavior.
And lastly, I'd like to ask you your message in line with this International Maritime Organization's campaign, Fair Future for Seafarers. Sir Deepak?
I think the best way for us to create a fair future for the seafarers is to try to imagineer the future. Let's imagine what that future is going to be like, and let's engineer solutions, because it's something that we can take from our past experience and continue to build going forward. A fair future is based on trying to anticipate the challenges, and we can learn a lot from what we've seen. We also recognize that one cannot do it by themselves. You've got to build partnerships. You've got to build partnerships based on a common vision, a good chemistry, and an ability to find meaning and purpose. And if I may, Rajesh, without being presumptuous, I'd like to think that this coming together to form We Team is one of those important elements that will allow us to identify, recruit, select, train, and nurture not only our current maritime professionals, but the future. And by doing this, we can create that fair future. You know, at the end of the day, it's a multiple varied world out there that requires us to think in different dimensions. And so working together in partnership with Synergy Marine has allowed us to really push ourselves and to ask ourselves, what else do we need to do? And even if we think we have all the answers, recognize that we need to be able to ask other people, what else do they think? And that vibrancy, I believe, is going to assist us to be as relevant and to remain relevant. And if we can be relevant, we can provide that fair future. But it's not enough for us. We have to create industry academic linkages. We have to work on public-private partnerships. And we have to realize that what this pandemic has taught us is that our plan Bs and plan Cs and our business continuity plans have to be more robust and have to recognize that you have to work across so many different channels and geographic boundaries. I don't think that the problems are going to get any easier to solve. They're going to get more complex. But having learned from what we have learned, we need to seek out partnerships so that we can work together, so that we can create the social infrastructure platform that will allow us to remain relevant and successful in the period to come. And when we do that, we can be fairer to everyone. And a fair future for seafarers means that you have to have a fair future for people on shore as well. This is all about the people that are in this industry. And ultimately, we have to realize that we do all of this work because we're serving a global community and a global economy. And it is both a significant challenge, but it is also a wonderful opportunity to move the world. And so, if I may just say, again, I'd like to thank Captain Unni for his vision. I'd like to thank Captain Unni for the openness to work together. And as we both said at one time, it's thumbs up on being able to provide an interesting future for our seafarers. And together, there's so much more we can do. And we're very excited about what we team can provide as we navigate a growing, complex, and volatile world ahead.
Captain Unni, your thoughts on a fair future for our seafarers?
Oh, thank you. Before even I start, thank you, Dito. Very honestly, from the bottom of my heart, thank you, and to the entire PTC team, for accepting or at least giving me and the team an opportunity to partner. And it really means a lot because, PTZ is PTZ. I mean, you have the largest seafaring pool and platform, and to think of maybe Synergy and us as a potential partnership means a lot to us because, we think that we need to align minds first. And in terms of fairness, the first thing that came to my mind was 12 years ago, Lynn, when a junior engineer who we're taking on board, his mom walked into the office and he just handed over this boy's hand to me and said that I lost my husband many years ago and I brought up this child. And now I hand him over to you and I hope you will take care of him. So this to me was, maybe I'm getting emotional, but this to me at that time was a huge sense of, it gave me a clear understanding of what role we have to play as an individual, as a human being, as an organization. And I think fairness has to come from within every individual at every pockets of the organization. And only then we can expect fairness. And the second thing that also occurred is that everybody has a purpose and they have passion. As an organization, we need to try and make sure that these are aligned. And for that, we need to create an ecosystem where we can do this. So for a seafarer, if we only do all the talk and say they're key workers, they're this, they're that, but we don't treat them fairly, then there is no fairness to start with. So we need to support them with all these platforms that we're trying to build together with now V team, with PTC and Dito. It's fundamental to create a fair future, because unless we set them up with a very sound and positive emotional state of mind when they go on board, we are not setting them up for success. So I think this is one. The second thing also is that there's so much of change happening around the world ashore. whether it's about decarbonization, digitization, all different skills and everything. So if you don't invest in our seafarers with these skills, attract young talent, I think we are not going to invest into a fair future for a seafarer. It's a question of somebody becoming redundant to something else. And we've seen that in many industries, because many industries were not prepared for the change that technology and other landscape, other external forces brought about. And as shipping, we should not be the same. So I think if we have to create a fair future for our seafarers, we need to invest into them, help them, prepare them for an exciting future. And I think this, for me personally, these challenges are a fantastic opportunity. It's more a great opportunity for us to be able to add value into the lives of seafarers and people ashore and on board. So we should not miss out on this opportunity. But we must make sure that we are fair, we have the right value system, we have to become good human beings. And these are important because the society needs good human beings. And I think that with that, I feel I'm really excited about this partnership with Dito and PTC and the team. I'm excited about what the future has in store. What are the opportunities that lie ahead that we can maybe add some value? Obviously, we have to remain humble and grounded and try to, understand first what the pain points are. So I think perhaps we have a great opportunity and we should not miss out because, otherwise we do injustice to the next generation. We've all benefited from shipping, and it's not fair if we don't hand over the knowledge and the know-how and set up the next generation of the seafaring professionals for success. And I hope we can do it in the most fair way. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Sir Dito and Captain Unni. With both of you, really, there is so much to talk about the welfare of our seafarers. And indeed, We Team is a way to pay tribute to our seafarers. Mr. Gerardo Borromeo, the Chief Executive Officer of the Philippine Transmarine Carriers, or PTC Group, and Captain Rajesh Unni, the Chief Executive Officer of Synergy Marine Group, or SMG. We salute you, seafarers, on your day as you sail steady and brave in all waters and wind. Pandemonium or pandemic as essential cogs in the logistics demand of the world. I am Yin Bakani. See you again next week for another episode of Maritime Viewpoints here on Marino World Online.